Hi, it's Jeff Pulver, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live here. And I'm so grateful to have a friend of mine who knows a thing or two about AI, Ray Pasquale from. I first knew you at Sonus, and of course, Unified Office is happening now and has been happening for quite some time. And whenever we catch up, I'm reminded of how important regulatory policy is and how important it is to protect us and our customers and ourselves from this. But today's topic is looking at AI in business, and we spoke earlier I guess it was last week. We spoke about some challenges with AI, which could really mess everything up for everybody. And I just was, I'm going to hand the mic over to you. Please do a proper introduction and talk a little bit. Tell people what Unified Office is all about, and particularly what's bugging you these days about AI.
So as you pointed out, we met each other when I was at Sonus Networks, which is now Ribbon Communications, I guess, right?
I don't know how you go from Sonus to Ribbon, but that's another day.
Well, it was a acquisition or a merger, who knows? But anyway, the point is, way back in those days, right? You Jeff Pulver, the Vonage order, the Pulver order, both of those orders were instrumental in propelling the voice over IP market forward in a sort of an unregulated fashion to stimulate competition in the markets, right? And innovation. And in those days, besides working with you at Vonage and whatnot, there was all these other companies, Ring Central, and I always tell the story how I went to the last Vaughn meeting that we had in San Jose with you, and we brought Vinod Khosla to meet my friend who was the first VP of BizDev at Ring Central, and Vinod wrote a check out for I think it was $14 million and said, "Don't deposit this until Monday."
Right.
But but a lot of companies came into being in those days and were kind of like, it wasn't about reliability, it was about price disruption to the old PBX, right?
Right.
So fast forward, when I left Sonus, did some venture investing, I wanted to sort of what I call pull a Steve Jobs. I'm not saying I'm Steve Jobs by any stretch, but I wanted to reinvent the voice over IP market to have the same level of reliability and quality and dependability that the old PSTN had.
Right.
And do it without having to use MPLS circuits and all that sort of thing. And so we did that. We took 2 or 3 years in 2012 or whatever to develop something called HQRP, which allows you to send real-time data, video, voice over common ordinary internet circuits that you would buy for your home. That's the short story. The longer story is, okay, great. Now that we've done that, and we built probably the most reliable VoIP platform in the market, let's make it more valuable. Well, how would we do that? Well, we built a suite of analytics very early on for our early customers, Domino's across the country, for example, and exposed a lot of behavioral analytics so that companies, restaurants, dental practices, auto dealerships, and the like can take advantage of information that they've never really seen before, right? Because a phone was a phone, and they said, we don't pay much for it, right? Unless it's not working, then we care. And so from those early days, I remember 7 or 8 years ago, I was talking about sentiment analysis. Before Sam Altman and OpenAI, maybe they were a thing, but nobody knew about them.
Nobody knew about them, yeah.
No, and we worked with Carnegie Mellon at those days, had a very early LLM. One could argue it was an SLM, small language model. But the training was so immature that we got way too many false positives. And so we withdrew from the market, and so I said, look, well, for now, we're going to just wait until the market matures. And now you fast forward to today, and you've got large language models everywhere. You got Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity, you've got all these things. And so, as you might expect, Unified Office is now unearthing information using AI techniques, if you will, to expose information in voice recordings or voice calls that you've never seen before. It's been invisible to you, right? You've never looked at it, So I'll give you an example. We've got one customer in particular that has over 100 restaurants throughout the country. So he's got to manage, he's probably got about 30 to 40,000 recorded calls weekly. Before Unified Office, he would cherry pick manually a handful of these calls per location to try to determine whether or not his workers were representing the brand properly. Did they upsell? Was there any issues with customer interactions and so on? Well, I mean, that's not going to work, right?
Right.
So if I can do that for you in real time, do all those calls, right?
Yeah.
Transcribe them, run AI on it, and then give you fact-based information as we know it to be, without the hallucinations, etc. That now I'm giving you actionable intelligence, and that's an overused phrase. I get it. But now you've got inputs into your cockpit, if you will. We've given you a primary flight display that gives you altitude, speed, fuel, right, direction, attitude.
Right.
All right. And then we give you the MFD, which if you want to drill down on any particular area, then you go over here and you can blow that all out, right, and get all the detail. So that helps you fly your business better, I like to say. So we've outfitted the cockpit with instrumentation. Heretofore, you had nothing. Or, right.
Which is a change, which is a total change. I mean, total
Right.
change.
And so there's also simultaneous to this, the move towards digitalization. Everybody has to have an app. Nobody wants to talk to anybody. But wait a minute. The first thing you do when something goes wrong is you escalate to a phone call.
Your phone call, imagine that, right? All of a sudden,
Yeah.
phone calls matter.
You're not emailing the fire department, right? By the way, my house is on fire.
You call them. You call them.
Right. So voice is still critically important. It's not going to go away. And in fact, I would tell you that it's emerging in this hyper sort of digitalized world that we live in. It's a more important thing than ever that people are trying to reconnect with their customers, right? Yes. They want to know who you are. They want to know that I'm Jeff Pulver, I'm Ray Pasquale. I know your kids. I know your family. And so, for us, the most logical thing is to surface that information that you've never seen before. We know about your digital life. Everybody knows about your browsing history, your shopping, all that sort of thing. But conversations have really not really done, nobody's really done the data mining. And I mean that in a positive sense. Certainly we don't do that surreptitiously. It's all done with, permissions and all that. But the spoken word has gone unanalyzed, if you will. But if you combine that with your online life, now we've got a reasonably full picture of Jeff and Ray. And so, it's kind of a long story, but that's what we're evolving into more of an AI-based analytics company using our base of communications platform that we know to be rock solid. So it's the garbage in, garbage out phenomenon.
Right. I mean, and from your perspective, it sounds like what you're offering customers is the ability to have a first-time look at the dark data, if you will, the fundamentally the stuff which was never spoken, stuff that was said before but never analyzed, things that just got, like, if it was a movie, it was all on the cutting room floor. But now all of a sudden, all that data becomes meaningful and actionable because it's being captured in a way scalable, as long as you can trust it, right? As long as the people receiving it can trust the analysis and trust that those voices really happened, that these conversations were real, then, oh my goodness, now here's an opportunity that how we could fix things. Maybe there's a great testimonial here. Gee, that insight was really good. Let's do this, let's do that. So we know we can capture the conversations, but do you ever run into issues about trust, about how to prove to people that the conversations actually happened?
Well, that people trust that. They have the voice recordings, right? They have the analog voice
So
recordings.
they know that part.
Listen, you can listen to them and compare against the transcriptions, right?
Okay,
to determine, what degree of accuracy have I transcribed this. And we go through great pains here to do multiple layers of this. We're testing against multiple transcription engines, and we're always doing that because the market's changing in AI in particular. On an hourly basis.
Yeah, I mean, some of the whisper models, this past summer, some models came out which blew me away in terms of how much more efficient and how much more effective they are. And it's like,
but there's still hallucinations that still exists. And of course, we know that AI is called machine learning. Neural networks is trying to simulate the human brain, right? But what we can't simulate are things like, okay, context is really important. If you take the word love, and I use this as an example because everybody will say, geez, I love the shoes you're wearing. I love that poster in your office.
Right.
I really love my child.
Different love.
I love my car. And I love the color of the car.
Right.
So if you're a machine, right, and you've got this context, you've got a label and said, this is the word love. This is what I know it to be based on whoever trained me.
Right.
Well, did that trainer give you all the hidden label context that really can define? And that can that happen? Yeah, so that can happen over time. So what am I trying to say here? That there is a trust factor because there's a frivolity to AI today.
Yeah.
Well, I'm watching while my kids are showing me shooting Santa Claus out of the sky with some kind of a shotgun. I mean, I don't do that. That's not real.
But there's your image. There's your image.
But
It
it's
must
really
be real.
funny, and they laugh about it, right? So a
Yeah.
lot of what they do with ChatGPT and Claude and everything and Grok, whatever, is based on creating humorous things. Okay, you could argue whether or not that's really tainting the market, saying this is not a serious market, because most people are using it either to obscure truth
Right.
or to have fun with it. It's one or the other. And we hear this a lot from customers. We have thousands, hundreds of thousands of people using our platform on a daily basis across the country. We hear it from prospects. I hear it from my friends. How do I trust? We don't trust anything anymore. We don't trust what we read online in particular. We don't trust what we see, obviously, with Sora and others like that, and Gemini creating,
all sorts of
whatever
things.
we ask it to create. Put Jeff Pulver next to Ray in my office, even though you're physically not here. So there's that whole trust thing that's being baked in to AI and creating kind of a reluctance to believe anything that's coming out of it. So that's a hurdle. The other hurdle in the market around is privacy. And we've got these class action lawsuits, these ambulance chases, where there's trillions of dollars of investment capital chasing this market. It's going to bring out what I call the ambulance chasers that are out there just, you didn't tell in your, this call's being recorded for training and quality assurance purposes. Well, that's not good enough anymore.
Right. And
now you had to add a third thing that said, and it may be subject to automated data processing.
And on top of that, some states will say that you have to offer explicit consent and consent with purpose to manage it. And you need to know whether you're dealing with someone in a one party where one party can implicitly record versus two parties. And it gets so complicated. And so for me, when I'm looking at, 30 years ago, when I was still working on Wall Street and were to be liberated the following year, I launched Free World Dial-Up, which was really I was a hobbyist. I was
just talking about that at my marketing meeting this morning,
and it was just fun, and it was nothing about money. It was about fun, and it was a lot. And then that was in the fall of '95. By '96, Local Tech and Dialogic, they go public, and then all of a sudden was proprietary protocols for VoIP, and then Intel, Microsoft decided in the summer of '96 that H323 should be it, and then SIP happens.
Megaco
and MGCP and all these other, but that happens over time. And we have so the first Bond conference was April of '97. It was at the Ritz-Carlton in San Francisco, and that was for me the intersection of the internet and communication. And what was really cool was that even though there was a .com bubble burst going into the year 2000, in the year 2000 the Bond conference was the biggest ever. Because while we were dealing with the .comers, we were not dependent on them because the intersection of the internet and communication just was different. And 30 years later, I'm now looking at the intersection of AI and communication. Granted, this communication industry has legacy, SIP PBXs out there as opposed to legacy analog PBXs. So we can redefine what legacy is, but we have this new intersection. And so I look at the AI communication with three legs. A leg for we'll call it high definition voice, or the highest quality voice we can deliver, so that we don't have to be aligned with the 1930s codecs. We can deal with wideband at some level, and we then have the memory and trust as you speak about it. Right, conversations become memory. Some people would argue that memory is sometimes I don't want to remember anything, and having total recall of every conversation is a little overwhelming. But you also need a trust layer for compliance to make sure that when we're dealing with memories, that if they're being shared with permission, they're being shared with the authority. And we have this, and just like 30 years ago, it was a fight on the regulatory side with the incumbents looking to create laws to stop innovation. In certain countries, there were clawbacks literally to the British mandate. In 1887, this was an illegal. I mean, was crazy stuff that was happening, and I was learning all about regulatory policy around the world. And here it's now AI policies happening on a state level. And of course, we do have the advancements of GDPR in Europe, and we have certain countries really stringent and others maybe should be. And it's like, how do we handle this? And
that's the big question, right? Forget trust and truth in the world right
yeah.
now. So if you focus on the regulatory climate, it's very much the same, in my opinion. I never thought I would ever be the person that would advocate for centralized regulation in Washington.
But
but the danger is now you've got 50 states, right, trying to regulate a small, these providers that are out there that are trying to create innovation. They don't have millions of dollars to spend on lawyers.
By the way, you sound like me 30 years ago, because it was I did free wall dial-up in October of 95. By March of 96, 300 phone companies from across the US, what did they do? They went to the FCC and they asked for two very simple truths: for the sale and use of internet telephony software to be banned in America, and the makers of the software to be regulated as telecoms. And it was Glenn Richards' former partner, Bruce Jacobs, who saw me at Columbia University telling my story, who felt sorry for me, which led to the founding. I founded the Vaughn Coalition in March of '96 because I didn't know what else to do, and I had no background in I had no background in lobbying or politics or
same here.
But I ended up starting that coalition, which still exists today. And it turns out that we were fighting the state of Minnesota. We were fighting California. We're fighting all these different states that decided to perk up. And if it's not being done on a federal level, they're going to go after you on a state level. Like, what the heck? And now it's the same thing happening all over again on the AI side. And it's
look what we did 2 years ago. We went to Washington. You were with me, right?
We actually convened the FCC in a new office building.
Right, the incorrect spam labeling issues, where about 40% of all my customers' calls were getting relabeled by some unregulated third party that I didn't give them permission to intercept my calls and change those labels.
Yeah.
And we went to Washington and talked to the commissioners, right? But we're up against people that are there full time, that they don't ever leave Washington. They're always in the offices of these people. And so, companies like mine, by the way, we refiled again on the 5th of this month on that same issue. So if you remember, and we'll move on, but the only winners in the ask that we gave to the FCC were the consumers.
Well,
to restore trust and faith in communications.
Yes.
And yet, that was 2 years ago, and we let that sort of fester. And of course, then it was an election and we had to wait for new commissioners. And all of a sudden, those actors came back in again and said, oh, no, you really want to adopt our proprietary platform. We are the ministry of truth in the world for all phone calls. So that prompted us to go back again.
So
anyway, we're up against it with AI now.
We are.
Very similar kind of an issue, which, again, with this over regulatory sort of fervor, it's going to quash and kill, I think. And I think this is what's going to kill AI as we know it today. Well, in my mind, the biggest problem as I see it, beyond trust and truth, where do you find truth in the world? How do you trust what you're seeing and hearing? And how do you trust the output is the legal problem. But more importantly, I think it's the collective ignorance of AI and the people that are trying to use it or sell it to a customer, and they don't know how to prompt it properly. They don't know how to limit hallucinations, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of responsibility to dealing with, and you've got a problem with ChatGPT. I'm not blaming ChatGPT, but OpenAI, right? They've got to figure out ways to monetize this investment. For every dollar in revenue a year ago, it cost them somewhere in the order of $2.35. So we know that it's not going to be free forever.
Right.
And so there's a lot of unknowns here. My point, I guess, is AI, as we know it today, won't exist. I think in 2027, it's going to be completely different, much like .com this, .com that was in the late 90s. And then the crash came. But what came out of the ashes was the internet as a utility.
Right.
You remember back in the 90s, you heard people, nobody's going to talk about something.com. I forget, it was the Today Show or something like that.
I remember, there's some wonderful classic recordings all about that.
Yeah. And it was like, now it's a utility. You can't live without the internet. So what do we think is going to happen? I think we're at peak hype right now, to borrow a phrase, in the AI market. I really do. I mean, people are showing me, my kids are developing pictures of me with a giraffe and all these crazy things. And because that drives early interest, of course, but it
Yeah.
also drives a lot of mistrust. And then during the COVID lockdowns, we saw finally have, our intelligence agencies come out and admit that they were creating censorship for any dissenting opinions on whether that shot was good for you or not, right? And
Yeah.
whether conventional medicines could also help. And so we developed another big mistrust about any information that we saw on Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, whatever. And so there's historical precedent here for us not to trust. And now you've got AI, which is, in my mind, extraordinarily useful if used properly.
Right. But you
My
need that,
doc,
you need almost like a warning label to just warn people.
so I got to say something that's probably pretty unpopular, but I'm going to say it anyway. I look at it as a gun. There's
Ooh,
a gun with a loaded gun. It by itself, if I put it on the table, it's an inert instrument. It doesn't do anything.
right.
But if somebody were to pick it up and they weren't trained on how to use it, you can create great harm,
True.
right?
Absolutely true.
And even if you're trained to use it, you might make a mistake
So,
once in a while.
yeah.
So, but the mistakes are hopefully somewhat limited. And so again, maybe that's not the greatest example, but I look at AI as this sort of this really unstructured machine that'll spit out anything you ask it. It doesn't have emotion. There's no nuance. It can't read body language, right? But it's a great search engine if you can believe the results.
Yeah.
And instead of me having to pour through all 3-4 pages of Google search and then synthesizing it and summarizing it, yeah, AI, generative AI, I should say, does a pretty darn good job at doing that. But again, it goes to, if I issue the same prompt 10 times in a row, the likelihood of me getting back 7 to 8 similar responses is not good.
And that's the problem.
So what a company like Oz, what we have here is we actually have engineers. One of the folks here was instrumental in working at Amazon on the Amazon Alexa project and helped create the Echo platform. Tom, my CTO, has a rich history in machine learning. Me, I'm just a good-looking guy that has a rich history in just about everything. But it goes to show that I think that the engineering experience that we bring to bear on this world,
No,
and
it's really,
ensures
it's
it helps to
really
ensure
important.
a factual-based output versus somebody that's just saying, I just downloaded ChatGPT and I just ran your business plan through it. Here's the result.
No, I hear you. So I'm taking this headstrong, in a positive way. So I had the Vaughn conference back, for around that for 11 years, from the 97 to 2008. And in March, I'm going to be in Dallas with our VCon conference. It's Vaughn with a C in it, but it's really about,
Right. I'm aware.
Capturing a memory and trust. And, I'm looking forward to seeing you and being part of your panel at IT Expo in February. And with a little arm twisting, maybe I can convince you or Tom to come down to Dallas and we'll talk about some of the issues that you raised here, because I want to curate it into our conference schedule, because I really think earning trust, bringing back trust, and having trust in an AI world is really important. And
Think
so,
about the early days when you were in school, right? When I wrote white papers. My professor or teachers, I had to show 5 or 6 different sources,
right?
that I pulled this from.
Sure. Bibliography is important. You need the references. We need that. I mean, we have to show our source of truth.
It's evidence is either evidence-based truth, which is observation. Like if you're a doctor and you've got a rash,
Right.
you know what? That's acne. I know that because I've seen it before and I've treated it successfully, right? And there's that, but there's also the multiple sources and that kind of truth. Locking up things that we don't know that are true in a protective, truthful wrapper doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
I agree.
But locking up, preserving truth with a trusted framework, that makes sense to me. And yeah, anyway, so this could go on forever, I guess. But what was the Gandhi quote? I'm trying to remember it. The expert knows more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing, or however it went. Because I actually we have this discussion a lot about, is it a large language model? Do we go towards smaller curated language
Yeah,
models.
I'm leaning toward going to a modern day, smaller curated model where you have a higher likelihood of managing that truth. Particularly
But the smaller it is, the less expert it might be, right?
I
Depending
hear you.
on medical research, that has to be a large corpus of data from around the world for all these universities and all this research. But the pizza shop owner doesn't need to know
Well,
the
the
fall
pizza
of the
shop
Roman
owner
Empire.
and the hotelier, they're going to need to have different sources of truth, and their needs or knowledge of sources will be different. So perhaps maybe as a compromise, there's not the large language models, but something less. Maybe something to be invented. But if people want to learn more about Unified Office, there's unifiedoffice.com. That's the URL.
UnifiedOffice.com will get you through a few things, although giving us a phone call, calling us up, go figure, right?
A
Or sending
phone.
us an
Look at that.
email.
You
Yeah,
guys,
you can learn a lot. We do. It's an amazing company that we built, not
and
just because I built it,
yeah, well,
but it does a lot.
congratulations on doing that. I mean,
It does a
seriously,
lot of good things for a lot of good people. And the AI is just yet another challenge for us to create that sort of trust, and our partners trust us implicitly.
which
And
is amazing. It speaks for
it
itself.
is. So it was great talking with you, Jeff. We'll
Great
do the
talking
same
to you.
discussion at IT Expo, I think.
I will see you next IT Expo, and thanks for the invitation to your session there. I'm looking forward to that.
Perfect.
And I'll catch
Excellent.
you again. And thanks for tuning in to our LinkedIn Live.